Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is the Hockey Outsiders, episode 14. Today is November 6th, 2017. I'm here with Shane Thompson, as always. Hey, Shane.
Hey there, Mike. Nice to be back. Happy to talk
We
hockey.
might, for you guys, we've got another friend who might be showing up here in hopefully about 15 or 20 minutes by the name of Kyle Webb. Mr. Kyle Webb is a fellow Canuck fan, which should be really not easy for me, but
Yeah, we outnumber you, maybe. We'll see if he shows.
all right. So the big news today was a nice big trade in the NHL. We've got Matt Duchene changing teams, and I have to say that this is a bit surprising for me. Not the surprising that he was dealt, but surprising to where he ends up, because I always figured that it would probably be Montreal that was there, and that,
Ottawa has just been
go
for
ahead.
a long time here with a roster that doesn't really have guys like him, and it makes sense. I see why Ottawa did it. They needed a little kick in the pants, I think, and they had the resources to move. Turris is a good player, a very good player actually, but he's a pass first guy, and they don't need pass first guy right now. I think they've got a lot of good passers. They need some guys who can get the puck in the net. So I like it for Ottawa.
Yeah, I think everybody kind of scored okay with it. From like, I mean, I would definitely not give anybody a distinct loss on this one. I don't think. Um, I think the Avalanche have done the right thing in kind of accepting that they're going to have to do a full sort of a rebuild. And I mean, they've got some core pieces there already that are extremely young, like McKinnon and a couple of other guys that are still there, and they're young and they can be sort of come in together and sort of gel a bit together. But um, yeah, like I said, just a little bit sort of shocked because now where does Montreal turn if everything keeps going the way it's been? Like who can they target here now that's actually on the block? And it's not looking too good
But
for them to do anything like that.
I think the reality for Montreal is this might be done. Like this generation of chances they've had. They've had a couple years in a row where they've gone on runs that made it really look like they could beat anybody. But that's not the same team as they have now. And the young guys they're replacing are not up to that level. Price is hurt too much. So unless he's going to play 70 games, which he's not going to do, and play at a super high level, a good team. And even adding Duchesne would not fix that, I don't think.
Well, I mean, if they added Duchesne, at least they'd have a couple of younger guys out front with Duchesne and what's his name there, Drouin at least. I mean, that would give me a little bit more sort of a nice sort of cushion to at least fall back on with the fans, even. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
them sort of missing out on that is sort of again. I mean, I think that they sort of need to let Galchenyuk go at this point because it's sort of soured there to a point where maybe it's unfixable. So I think they need to sort of address that, and I think they sort of maybe missed dropped the ball on this one because they had a really good um, opportunity to grab Duchesne and add him to that that mix. And let's be realistic. I mean, they still could have salvaged the season and and maybe done something with it, right? I mean, but now they're sort of even more sort of under the under the whole aspect of being able to pull guys out because that's one big name that's less that's out there. I mean, who else can they really go after, right?
Yeah. I mean, and they're going to get to a point where they're not buyers anymore, for sure. It's not that far away. Um, I don't know if they could have offered what some of these two teams offered. Like Colorado got a lot out of this trade. They didn't. There's a lot of people out there, and including us, I think last podcast saying that Sakic needs to go. Sakic needs to go. He's doing horribly. Everything's bad. Sakic's the worst. Well, you got a lot in this trade. Like that's about max value for Duchesne. You got a first pick. The young defenseman he got can play. It looks like he might even be able to play right away. And they got a second round pick. And that's good value if you're trying to rebuild. I think they were patient, and there were rumors about a lot of teams trying to get Duchesne and being very close. And the big naysaying on Sakic is that he doesn't make the trade, and he'll like very last minute he will like pull it off the table. He'll be like, no, actually, we want one more pick, and then the teams get frustrated and get out of the market for him. But in the end, that's about the best he was going to get for Duchesne, I think. So
I think it was a decent trade. I mean, nobody got really sort of taken out or fleeced on this one, that's for sure. But yeah, it's definitely a big one. I think Ottawa is gonna really enjoy having Duchesne there, that's for sure. Duchesne and Carlson
yeah,
are going to be really nice together. Nice additions to be playing together on any sort of line. Period. I mean, Duchesne's a speedy guy that knows how to put the puck in between the net. That's for sure.
and that's a team that I mean they're struggling a little bit right now. They've gone on a little run here, like 500 hockey, but they've proven everybody wrong for like a year and a half now. So they're better than they look on paper, and they're a well-built system, well coached, bringing in the right guys at the right time. With they still have a strong system too, with a guy like Chabot on their. If they wanted to trade Chabot, they could get a mint for him, but I don't think they ever would. I think they know how good he is. That he's going to be a long.
Again, with defense being at such a prime, they wouldn't do that anyway. I mean, you can get so much for most defensemen now anyway. So that's
that's what you're seeing.
That's the thinnest
with Samuel
position in hockey, I think, is good defenseman, right? So,
well, that's what Sakic said in that trade, is that he needed that Samuel Girard, the defenseman. That was like the kicker on the trade, and he wouldn't have done the trade without him. And he's a second round
too, yeah. So definitely he's been talked as a really good, solid defensive prospect as well. So he's definitely no slouch.
Those defensive prospects, man. If I were drafting in the NHL at this point, I would be stockpiling, and that's what Chicago Blackhawks do. If you look at the way the Chicago Blackhawks draft, their third and fourth and fifth rounds, it's all defensemen. They just go defense, defense, defense. Because if even one of those guys hits at all, and you teach them right, and they can either go right into your lineup, or they can just be like Gustav Forsling this year has done well for them. The guys in their system that I'm just like, every time I find a guy deep in a draft, how good they are, like in a dynasty or whatever, it's always the Blackhawk guy.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's quite interesting. It's interesting to see how it sort of played out. Like I said, I was a bit surprised about how, like I said, where he went. I thought almost certain. I would have been almost certain saying that he would have ended up in Montreal. So, I mean, but Montreal has sort of. But what the surprising part is, they're doing what they're doing without Carey Price in the nets, which scares me a little bit. Scares me a little bit if I'm a Montreal Canadiens fan.
I'm just gonna go grab water. My throat's dried out. Give me 1 minute. I got a cold.
Beer break. Sorry, folks. I'll be here on a beer break in just a little bit, but no worries. Anyway, the more things that I would say about the trade itself is just I think all three teams did fairly well with it. Nashville's looking like they're really going to go for it this year with Turris. I mean, that team was Stanley Cup finalist last year, and they've gotten even better now with Turris in the lineup. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see how that plays out for Nashville as well. We'll wait for Shane to come back before we head on to our next topic here, though. I'm going to talk about. You want to talk about next, Shane? Oh, Shane's still struggling here. A little bit of a lapse here in between. Like being on the spot, hey?
I'm back. Sorry, I got a cold.
That's okay.
I got a teacher's gold.
I just kind of babbled to myself for a few minutes. Is there anybody that, what is going on here right now? Just weirdo talking to himself.
Ah, I know how a lot of people do podcasts on their own. I don't know how they do it though. I'm always baffled. Bill Burr is one of my favorites.
Yeah. So what do you want to talk about next? There's a couple I would like, but I don't want to jump into the boring shit for you right off the get-go.
One thing I wanted to talk about, because I'm in this situation right now, that I'm doing a full rebuild already with the team in a keeper league.
Okay, so you want to do some fantasy stuff, or do you want to just you want to keep with the NHL? Or do you want to do fantasy now? Let's go. Let's do it. Fantasy's good.
I think jumping into the fantasy for a second. I got a team right now that that I traded away picks last year. It's a bad team. I've done pretty well, but the best I'm gonna finish with that team is middle of the pack at the very best. If all my players perform. When I drafted, I focused on getting keepers in the late rounds. So I've got a bunch of guys that I think would be pretty good. But I had Evander Kane, who was killing it in fantasy this year. So far, penalty minutes, shots, his shots were crazy. Points, he's doing well. But I think he's clearly a guy that's playing over his head. So I got to a point where I got some good offers for him without even asking. And I got a guy like Barzal, who just got 5 points today. Jesper Bratt. And I added a pick. And I think the philosophy I kind of have is if you're in that situation where you're middle of the pack and you don't really see, you see the guy at the top just pulling away or whatever, take a look around your league, find the best keepers, like kind of rank the guys that you think are the best keepers, and throw a few offers as you go. The longer you wait, if it's a guy like, I don't know, if it's Barzal, and if I waited another week for Barzal, I wouldn't be getting Barzal in that trade. Barzal just got 5 points today. Would have traded me Barzal. So you're taking a risk by waiting.
Late keepers can be a fickle bitch to figure out too, though, because I mean they're really sort of up and down, right? I mean the same thing happened to me this year when I held on to Hosang, right? Now he's not even in the league.
Yeah.
So they can be really tough to figure out. So that's the kind of risk you gotta take. But I definitely agree with your strategy because just to give everybody who watches this a little bit of insight on the setup that we talk about mostly is Shane and I are in a league that I actually run, and it's a very deep, an extremely deep keeper league. Each guy can keep up to 6 keepers for a maximum of 4 years. But it's 28 rounds straight through, so our waiver wire is very, very thin. So when guys do come up and they do come up, and that's the best part about this league, and this is what I love the most about this league is that there's always guys that seem to kind of come up and are surprising every single league. I mean, look at Jersey. Jersey's got like 4 guys that are pretty decent that weren't picked in the rounds, right? I mean, you've got Jesper Bratt. You've got what's that defenseman's name?
Sure.
Sorry.
Sure.
Oh yeah,
Will Butcher.
There's guys like that, like Kerfoot as well, wasn't drafted. I picked up Yanni Gord, who's been really great for me in Tampa. A lot of guys like that you can really pick up in those later rounds if you're paying attention. And when Kyle gets here, he actually scammed a couple of really late ones as well. He ended up with your Canuck guy. What is his name? Bowser.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean,
I have Bowser in our league.
Every year you.
Maybe I.
Like that. So it's actually really quite good if you're always scanning the waiver wire for deals like that. And yes, your strategy is right. If you're thinking, I mean, our league basically has the top 3 guys get money. First place gets more, second place gets a bit less, and third place gets basically his money back plus the next year paid. But ours is set up a bit different where the bottom 3 guys pay. Last pays double. Second last will pay an extra, a little bit less than double, and then the third place guy pays an extra smaller bit than the last place guy. And it's basically, we've set it up that we've got guys who are those lower guys can have a couple of extra keepers for the year.
And I really suggest that for any league, that you need to have a penalty for being last place. It doesn't have to be more money. it could be less keepers. It could be, those are the best two ways, though. I think paying more money or losing your keepers. Losing keepers it hurts if you're the last place team because you're
I think
not even getting a benefit for being last.
Yeah, I think it would just widen that sort of gap of a guy. I mean, if he's just not a very good keeper, he's just not a very good keeper, or not a good drafter. I mean, I think taking his picks away obviously isn't going to help the parity of the league. I mean, the last 2 years that we've ran this one, the guys who won 3, they dealt away most of their stuff, and this year it's the bottom teams that are kind of looking like the ones that could go the way.
The other thing you can do if you do auction, you can have a minimum auction salary for, so like you can't have more. If your salary doesn't equal 150, then you need to add salary. Like you need to have a minimum cap, basically. That works as well. That forces people to, or else you just get booted from the league. Like,
since we're talking about fantasy stuff, let's go about some players who you like. We touched on a couple of them that are sitting on the waiver wire that could really help your teams, no matter how deep your leagues are. But what we'll do is we'll kind of break this down into little bits of categories. We'll go with team or leagues that aren't as deep, where there's some guys that are maybe sitting in the 40-50% not owned range, and then kind of go down from there. But let's start with some leagues that are extremely deep, like the one that we're in, and let's name off a few keepers sort of there that. Again, just to let everybody know that ours is a 14-manager league, and it's 28 rounds. So, like I said, our waiver wire is extremely fun. I mean, there's not much really out there. Just to give you a little example of this, I'll screen share exactly what it looks like here for just a minute, and I'll show you what it looks like. So if you actually take a look at what we're sitting at on our this league's waiver wire list, you will actually see that we've got Parise, and the only reason he's there is because he's out. Orlov, again, look at that stat line. It's just brutal. So, I mean, you're looking at guys that are less than 20% owned for the most part that are coming in on these lists here. You're going to see all the guys that I've got on my favorite list, Shane. This is a nice.
Oh, good to know. All right, yeah.
But as you can see, most of the guys, Henrik Sedin was just dropped today. But if you even look,
yeah, I dropped him.
So I mean, as you can see, our list of free agents is extremely weak. So let's talk about some of those guys that
low on the list that might have value.
Yeah, that would have some value.
One that I think is interesting, and it's a weird place to start, is in Vegas, Colin Miller, who, if you just look at his numbers, you go, whoa, this guy's got power play points, he's got minutes, he's got points, he's doing a little bit of block, a little bit of hit. In Boston last year, he was pretty much useless. He was like a bottom of the waiver guy that would never get picked up. He was always kind of around, like he kind of looked interesting because he would get the blocks and the hits, but nothing else really. But
his stat line here, I'll screen share this just to let everybody know what he's actually sitting at right now. He's the Vegas defenseman. He's sitting at 24% owned, 2 goals, 6 assists.
Yeah.
He's at -3, which isn't all that bad. His penalty minutes are okay, but yeah, he's got power play points, 6 of them, and he's getting your hits and your blocks. Pretty standard stuff there, yeah.
And see, I thought he was more of a bruiser, and then I looked into him a little bit more, and he's been a scorer his whole career. He's been a power play guy, and just when he got to Boston, he didn't get that role. But that doesn't mean he can't do it. Like, you see a guy like in Pittsburgh last year, what was his name? Justin, the guy who got 50 points out of nowhere. Schultz, yes, Schultz. Schultz is another guy who couldn't put up points in Edmonton and then got into a different system where they utilized him, right? And boom. And Vegas has every reason to let Colin Miller play and let him try and shoot and let him try and put pucks in the net because they don't have any other options on D. He's playing well.
Yep.
He's been sitting on the waiver wire in a lot of my leagues just all year, even though his stats are good. Like, you look at him and you're like, well, that guy's doing great.
I think his biggest drawback is that he's on that Las Vegas team, and everybody's waiting for that team to just sort of crumble.
Yeah.
And I
You
think,
might have missed the good moment of Colin Miller.
yeah,
But I think he is a guy who is going to be okay long term. I think if who knows what they'll do with him next year, or if they even keep him, they might trade him off. But I think his stats will be pretty solid. He'll be a 40-point guy at the end of the year, I'd say. And I think he'll get the power play points, which are valuable in a lot of leagues because it's kind of easy to find points. It's definitely easy to find hits and blocks. It's not easy to find power play guys on the waiver wire because the waiver wire guys are the top end talent generally. So you're not going to find guys that get power play time.
yeah. I'll go with the one that my choice for these lower division leagues, and I actually got really lucky with this one because I ended up scooping him up. And when I scooped him up, he was at a 0% owned in all leagues. So if you're in a deeper league, there's probably a pretty good chance that he's still out there because even currently he's sitting at 6% owned. And that is a gentleman named Yanni Gourde. And he's playing alongside Braden Point. And oh, I can't remember who he's there. I looked at this the other day. Let me just check.
This year's superstar, Braden Point.
Yeah, well, there's another. We'll be mentioning him in a little bit here as well. But yeah,
Frontier.
he's sitting in the line with Palat and Braden Point.
Yeah.
If you just look at his stat line, he's actually putting up some nice big numbers. He's getting 17 minutes of ice. He's got 4 goals, 5 assists for 9 points. He's a +7. He's not going to get you many PIMs. He's more of an offensive guy, but he's got a couple of power play points, shorthanded points, doing okay on the shots on goals, and he gets his face-off wins as well, which is, again, 8 hits and 7 blocks. That's a nice stat line for a guy that's at 6% owned in most leagues. Again, which means that he's going to be out there for pretty much anybody to be grabbing at any point in the season.
Yeah, and when I look at him, I see the minutes first, and I go, "Wow!" Like they're playing him a lot. That's not 18 minutes is a lot for a guy that you don't know too much about. So they must have a good view of him. They play him in all situations.
Another nice thing about Yanni Gourde is his center right wing eligibility, which is always nice. You got the versatility where you can move him throughout the lineup as well. So again, for a guy that's so little, he is a really beautiful guy to sort of have and be keeping an eye on at least at this point. Because if he sits on that second line, and if that second line keeps sort of pumping away like they have been, he could very well turn into a very, very solid keeper for you.
Yeah, I agree with that one totally.
Who do you got?
Then from my list, I've got Josh Anderson, Columbus, who held out. So I almost guarantee in all of the drafts that anybody's in, unless they did a really late draft after the year started, can get picked or was a very last round pick because he was holding out. Nobody knew when he was going to play. But last year, I picked him up at the end of last year, and he just was solid the whole end of the year last year. Hits and lots of ice time and scores goals and seems like he's a good player. And he held out thinking he's worth more than what they were willing to offer. And he's come in and he's played great. He's been right back to the same way. Reminds me a bit of Ryan O'Reilly, who held out. They didn't want to pay him what he thought he was worth. And then Ryan O'Reilly became a hell of a player. So I kind of think Josh Anderson is legit. For sure, he's a keeper target because I guarantee if your keeper does by round keeping, I guarantee he was either not picked or at the very end. So you're going to get him as a 27th round in our league or a last round keeper in your league. Yeah, and I think
So again, as you can see, his stat line looks very, very similar to Yanni Gourde. He's got a little bit less for minutes, but again, 5 goals, 3 assists, 8 points, +5. He's getting a few PIMs. He's not getting any power play stuff, but I mean, you can kind of take that point production and not be too worried about it. As the way Columbus is sort of steamrolling and rolling along, they're playing really, really well. Shots on goal, he's getting you hits. He's not doing as many blocks, but he is hitting at least, which is another big category that you can win if you're in one that's deep like that. Yeah, he's definitely been a nice surprise. My next guy
I like him.
I'm gonna stick on the on the same team as George because I think that this team has just played unbelievably, and they've got some players that are putting up some really nice points and really good stat lines. He's actually a day to day at this point in time, but Matt Calvert, I picked him up as well when
Yep.
he 0% owned. He's sitting at 1% owned, so I can almost guarantee you that he's probably available in your league. And I'll show you his stat line here as well. But he's actually doing quite well. His has more been over the last couple of weeks, but as again you can see here, he's 1% owned. He's getting 15.5 minutes. He's got 8 points, +3, 9 PIMs. He's not getting any power play points. He's sitting on the third or fourth line in Columbus, but again, he's getting his shots on goal. He's winning his odd faceoffs, hits, and blocks. So he's got a nice kind of full stat line for a guy that's sitting that low. If you're in a deeper.
Also, if you can get blocks from a forward, there's so much value there. There's certain guys who do it. There's very few, but there are few forwards who get blocks, and that's just like Pavelski is a guy I think who gets a lot of blocks every year.
Yeah,
there's a lot of value in that because most people are only getting blocks from their defensemen.
yeah.
Couple forwards that are getting above average amount of blocks or even an average amount of blocks. That stat for you.
Yeah. All right. Who do you got next on yours?
Well, on the topic of blocks, Joel Edmondson in St. Louis. I liked this guy last year. He's another guy just like Anderson that I picked up at the end of last year and just rolled with him all through the end of the year because all he does is put up positive stat. Like he's not going to be a 40-point defenseman, solid 30-point defenseman with a good plus minus with a huge amount of blocks. Like if you check out his blocks, it's around 50 now. And that's really in the high end. So, and if you're willing to draft a guy like Chris Russell, who gets a massive amount of blocks, but doesn't even get 30 points, like he'll get 20 points at the end of the year and pretty much do nothing else. And might not even be plus. You're going to get Edmondson, who does a lot of good stuff for your team. And he's young. He gets 22 minutes a game or more. Like he's a solid player, I think. And I think that's part of the reason they traded Shattenkirk was because they knew they have these young guys, Parayko and Edmondson, who are ready to play right now and are solid. And that's why this team's good now. They've given these guys more minutes. They're young. They're feisty. I like Edmondson a lot. I think he's just safe. He's not going to be much more than he's doing right now, but this is good. If he just does this the rest of the year, he's a positive to your hockey team.
Edmondson's stat line looks like this. As you can see, he's about 16% owned in most fantasy leagues, which means it's going to be available for you at some point there. He's got 4 goals, 5 points. He's got +4. He's getting you some penalty minutes. But yeah, you're right. His biggest asset is right here. Hits and blocks, 23 and 47. That is a nice stat line across the board. Again, like Shane mentioned, he's not going to get you too many power play points or anything like that. But if you're looking for guys that are going to get you some positive stats on everything but that, there's a guy you could look into.
Yep, exactly.
For sure. Let's see who else is on my list. I'm going to jump to the one that we mentioned before. There's a couple. This list is going to be sort of all scattered with Tampa Bay Lightning because there's a few, and I'm in a couple of different leagues this year, and I was able to scoop up both of these guys. Braden Point is who I'll go with next. This kid can play, and being in Tampa, where he is right now, is probably the best place that he could possibly be. He can develop. He's not going to be playing against top pairings because you've got Kucherov and Stamkos and those guys, and it's guys like Braden Point and his line mate Nemeshnikov and Gord that are just killing everybody else right now because they're playing against the softer pairs, and they could very well be top line players that are just sitting on those second and third lines in Tampa.
Yeah, a lot of drafts. He was a target for me in every draft I did this year, but it wasn't just me. Everybody was on him a little bit. And in like my auction league, he went for I forget what he went for, but it was like $20 or something, like way above what I was ready to pay. But I regret it now. I had the feeling, everybody had the feeling, and it turns out he was worth paying that much for. He was worth paying more for because he looks legit. What he did at the end of the year last year wasn't a fluke at all. And it looks like this is what he is. Like he's a good hockey player.
Certainly is. His stat line's a bit different. Now, this is going to be a little bit harder. You're not going to be able to snag this guy on some of your deeper leagues, obviously, because as you can see, 75% owned, which puts him up there in probably the, you know, the mid to like higher end drafts that are anywhere from 15 to probably 28 rounds. You're probably not going to find Brayden Point very much anymore. But again, for those drafts that are not so deep, like 10 to 12 rounds, you might be able to might be able to pull him off and get him out of there. I mean, he's currently season ranked as the 18th best skater, which is insane. He's getting 20 minutes, just 19 and a half minutes of time on the ice every day. He's got 16 points with 7 goals. And his stat line's just full. He's got 2 penalty minutes, which is not what you're getting him for, but power play points, power play assists, shorthanded points, game-winning goals, shots on goal, face-off wins. He's hitting and he's blocking, minimal hits, but I mean, he's still blocking shots as well. I mean, the stat line is just beautiful when you look at this kid. How old is he? He's like 19 years old. How old is Brayden Point?
Oh, he's a little older, I think. I think he's more like 22 or 23.
He is.
Maybe I'm wrong.
1996. 21.
21, yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And the question you're at now with Point, it might not be whether you can pick him up or not, but if you drafted him and he's doing this well, do you sell high on him? And I don't know if you do, man. I think be happy. Definitely in a keeper, keep him because I'm sure you got him for way cheaper than his value. He's a great keeper for next year. But if you're not, if it's a redraft league and you're getting offers for him, unless you're getting something real good, I would hold on. He's doing really well, and I think he's legit. He was. If you just probably broke down the last 2 months of last year, how he played, he was in that category for top like 50 player for sure. He was in that group just in those months, and now he's a little bit older with a team that's more built to him. So I love Tampa Bay. I mean, it's a team to buy in on, and if a young player's doing well, I don't think I would sell him. I think I would just keep him.
Yeah, in the one draft that we're in, he's one of the keepers in the 27th round, and he's looking like an absolute gem there.
That's amazing. He was that kind of guy. If people weren't on top of the research going into the draft, he could have dropped real low last year because he was kind of off the board a little bit.
I had the same thing.
If you were paying attention,
a couple of years back when we were in the same league, but I ended up getting Ryan Johansson in the dead last round, 28th round. And it was the next year he came out and he turned into this just workhorse, really good, solid player that everybody wanted. And yeah, he was one of those guys that you just can't get rid of. You just can't.
Well, you've got
Brayden Point's the same thing.
All you got to do is look at Kucherov on the same team, and he's another guy who was a pickup a few years ago, and now he's top 5 scorer in the NHL. So, like that team, when you're looking for keepers, look for teams that develop well because you're looking for young guys, of course, most of the time. But if the team is bad at developing young players, then or putting them in that role, then there's no point because they're just going to set. Like look at Joshua Hosang this year, who has a huge pedigree, but there's conflict there. Yeah, people are wondering what to do with him. And I think like it's drop at this point, which is crazy. I thought he was going to be good this year.
I am sitting with him in my league, and he was a 28th round keeper for me last year. And
so you can't drop.
That is the one thing that scares me more than anything is dropping him because he's got that talent to be so damn good.
Yeah.
And
if you dropped him, I would pick him up.
That's kind of why I'm holding on to him, but he's just wasting space for me, right? He's not contributing to my team at all. And it makes it really hard to figure out what to do with him in this situation because do you hold on to him and possibly go the whole year with him being not available? Jeez. Not if you're trying to at least cash in the league, that's for sure.
No, like at some point you got to either cut your losses if you want to still go for it, or just bite the bullet and just sit on him and hope that he comes around, and you're better off keeping him in that situation and just accept that you're not going to win. You're going to be a man down for a period of time.
Yeah.
I got an interesting one here that I noticed when I was looking guys up.
Yep.
Take a look at Derek Dorsett in Vancouver.
Oh yeah, I know this already. Yeah. He's been sort of he's got what the hell is his name? Dale Weiss-itis is what he has. He's got Dale Weiss-itis this year. You know what? Last, you know it, but he is again. He's leading. What is he leading the team in goals? Was he leading the team in goals up until a couple of days ago? Wasn't he?
The thing with him is he's playing 17 minutes. He's a bruiser. He's a fighter. He's like a grinding fighter guy. So if you're in a penalty minutes league, which you and I are both in, a lot of guys will just have a penalty minute guy on their roster just to get those penalty minutes, win them that category during the week, even though it's a 0 otherwise. Like generally, those guys don't get any points.
He's already got 6 goals.
6 goals, baby.
Yeah. And you're putting up big pims and you're scoring 6 goals. That's a huge win for any kind of goon you got sitting on your roster. The only guy that I would say I've actually appreciated more with that role as sort of that penalty minute guy is Ryan Reeves in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, they're both very similar. But if you look at the minutes comparison, there's no comparison. Dorsett's way more.
I'll put up the Dorsett's numbers here. Ooh, look at that. That's just not
trippy.
Oh no, is it?
Ooh.
Groovy.
We just went into another dimension right there.
Kidding. Creepy. So if you take a look, he's playing 15 and 3/4 minutes, 6 goals, 2 assists, 8 points, 44 pims. He's always going to get you those hits, right? That's
what he
does. Short-handed points.
And the hits, yeah, of course.
That's gotta go, hey.
Yeah, they're playing him a lot. Like
just because they're kind of in the same sort of category. I actually have Ryan Reeves in mine. Geez, how do you spell his name?
VES.
Yeah, I know that's not spelled right.
I think.
Is it Brian? REAVES. There we go. Yeah, you can see he's put up a mere 3 points, but 59 pims, and he's hitting like a machine as well.
And look at the minutes. It's half as many minutes.
True,
so
yeah, this is true. But Vancouver is supposed to be a shitty team this year, and that's what's surprising.
Well, the Sedins are shitty, that's for sure. But the rest of the team, like Brock Boeser is a guy we can talk about later, but he's not in the lower category of guys to pick up. If you don't have him now, you're not going to get him. Like Boeser is a player, it looks like.
I think there's a few sort of in that category that if you missed, you're kind of out on. Clayton Keller's one.
Yeah.
Braden Point's another.
Yeah.
Same thing with Boeser as well. There are a few that are sort of like that, and then there's a couple of guys where you have to just sort of eat it on as well. Guys like Dylan Strome and Josh Hosang, those kind of guys, you just sort of gotta just take the hit on them and just sort of let them go.
Here's a little, I got a little list here of guys that I think are all kind of in that same top tier. And just tell me who you think's going to keep it up and who's not going to keep it up. Like pretty simple, just who's going to keep at this pace, you shouldn't sell them, or who should you be selling high. So first, Nemestikov in Tampa Bay, who's been unreal.
I'm going to say that you hold on to every single Tampa Bay player, regardless. That team is absolutely 100% stacked full of talent. That team is so ridiculous. Yep. I don't see any team coming anywhere near them this year. I think that, barring massive injuries, they're probably going to be I think that they just absolutely demolish everybody for the remainder of the year. I don't think that anybody's even anywhere near close. I think they are a depth defenseman away from being the overwhelming Stanley Cup favorites. I don't see anybody touching that team.
Totally agree. So he's a keep. I agree with that. Like, no, don't trade high. Keep him. Love every bit of it.
In the one cash league that I'm in, I've shown you all the stats that I've shown you are from our league. I'll show this one to you when we're kind of offline because Kyle's part of this one too, and I can't be giving away all my secrets to that sneaky bugger. So, but yeah, in this one as well, it's one of those things where these guys, there's so many of these guys that are just going to eventually just hit it off. And I've been sitting on him for a couple of weeks. Because again, I just looked where he was in the lineup. I thought, wow, you just can't lose with him. I've got him and I've got Killorn as well. And again, the same thing that like they're playing such huge minutes and just putting up great amounts of points, right? That you literally just can't get rid of them.
If you bought in on Tampa Bay, you're winning your league right now. I guarantee. If you bought in and you really went all in on Tampa Bay guys, you're winning your league. I'm sure you are.
I've got from Tampa, I've got Nemeshnikov, Killorn, and Braden Point. I've got 3 of them.
And those are 3 great ones to have.
More than 10 points already. Obviously, Braden Point we talked about before. He's sitting at 16. Nemeshnikov is sitting at 14, and Killorn's got 11. That's a big pile of points from 3 guys. And Killorn is almost, droppable. He's only got 1 goal, but again, he's just getting assists from playing with just great players all the time, right?
Yeah, they're just going to keep scoring. Yeah. Okay, let's try to be a little quicker though. So Nemeshnikov keep. Yeah, absolutely. Here's an interesting one, and I've got him. Josh Bailey in New York Islanders. He's playing crazy.
I think you sell him high.
I agree, but I also looked into it. I totally agreed at first thought, and then I looked into him a little bit more. He hasn't been a scorer, but he is a top 10 pick, and he was a scorer in the minors. He absolutely was a scorer before getting to the NHL. He hasn't been a scorer in the NHL. He had 50 points last year, though. He was the least known 50-point player in the NHL last year, for sure. Nobody knew Justin Bailey had, Josh Bailey had, I think 56 points or something like that last year. So while I definitely, I'm considering selling high, trading him off as a keeper and being like, hey, this is the greatest keeper in the world. Give me some awesome player for him. I do think there is some potential for him to get to 60 points or 65 maybe. Like he could play out of his world and get up there because if you really look back, he had the pedigree. He didn't show it, but the Islanders didn't show anything for a few years. Like they've been bad with their prospects for a few years. Like they've definitely got problems developing prospects. But it seems like this year they've got a better regime in. Like Barzal is turning into a real player, it looks like. So maybe they've kind of fixed their problems and they know how to play these guys right. So I agree, sell, but just be careful. Get something of value. Don't just give him away thinking he's not a good player.
That could be another thing, though, that's sort of a deterrent, too. He's on that Islanders team that doesn't look overly solid. I mean, yeah, they're showing glimpses of it here early, but I'm still not really sold on that team. And the reason why I would stick with guys like Nemeshnikov is for the simple fact that he's on a great team. He's going to be playing with talented guys every single night. And that's a big, big, big difference maker for if you're keeping and selling a guy, I think.
So there's a guy that then we kind of both agree, sell Bailey if you got him for something good. If you can get something good for him, do it. And you could sell him as a keeper to a lot in a keeper league for sure. You could hype him up as, well, look, you're going to keep him in the 26th round and he's so good. But he doesn't get any, just gets points. He doesn't get hits, blocks, nothing. Like he doesn't do anything else. He just scores a bit. That's all he does. So he's not that valuable, really. What about Dustin Brown in LA?
Oh, he's the Jekyll and Hyde of the year. Oh my God. This is a guy that's been frustrating to me for so long. And he, he's one of those guys that he didn't do anything to at least get you penalty minutes and hits. But he even stopped doing that last year. Jeez, it's just and look at the start to this year. Like everyone's, oh, he's back. I'm not sure. I'm not convinced because he reminds me a lot of Chris Stewart. And if there's people out there that have been pooling long enough, you probably have heard of Chris Stewart because he goes on these insane streaks of putting up points and penalty minutes and hits. He does it all, but then he completely goes silent for like 6 months. And just when you think you've got this guy, you've got a solid pick, you've got a solid guy that's that's mashing categories for you, he turns into that guy he's always sort of been. And Dustin Penner was another one too, right? A guy that would just go on enormous tears of
Yeah.
multiple stat categories, and you'd be like, yes, he's doing it. Finally, But then he just turns around and shits the bed again and turns into his old self. Now he's getting lots of playing time with Kopitar and Iafallo, who hasn't put up the points, which I'm a little bit shocked with. But Kempe is a guy that we mentioned before, who you should probably, I would hold on to if you get a chance to as well. But yeah, I would say sell high on Dustin Brown and do it as soon as you possibly can.
Agree. He's not going to do this, and you're never going to get him at this high point ever again. So even if even if you get rid of him and he does okay, you've still sold high. You can, as long as you can feel confident that he's not going to become a 70-point guy again, which he's not going to become a 70-point guy.
Yeah,
it's not going to happen. So I agree, sell high. What about one that you have interest in? I know is Couturier in Philly.
Oh, this one's really tricky. This one's a real tricky one because I've been really high on Couturier for quite some time, like for years. Even when he was playing the 3C role in Philadelphia, I thought that he was a better player than that. And at some point during almost every fantasy league that I've ever been in, I've had Couturier at some point in time throughout the year. For the first time in his career, he's getting a legitimate shot to play with scoring talent, and it is paying off for the Philadelphia Flyers in ways that they never expected. I would say with Couturier, you have to keep him just because if he stays on that top line with guys like Giroux and Voracek, he's always going to be able to get you points. And he's such a face-off stud. Literally does it all. He can play in any situation, and he's going to, depending on what round you've got him in, I think anything over 14, it's a no-brain keeper.
Yeah, for sure. I love the role. I like the player. The team's gotten better since him being put in that role. So I definitely think they're going to see, oh, we probably should have done this a long time ago. Like Giroux's not a defensive player, and neither is Voracek. They're not known for their defensive abilities at all. So you throw a guy like Couturier in the middle and let him play hard, and he's got the hustle for sure. I think he's good. I think he's one of the better keepers this year for sure. I'm sure that a lot of people got him later. He's going to be one of the top keepers, I would say. Right now, I don't know what the rank is. You should bring up his rank right now. His rank's crazy.
Let me see.
He's another guy like Point, who's right up in the top group. Maybe 26 or something like that, I think.
I'll go back to our league here. I'm giving away too much information to both you guys in my league. I showed you all of my looked at players and everything. I got to be a lot more careful, hey? Jeez.
Well, I'll be honest. Kyle mentioned Kerfoot when we were talking earlier, just in chat. And I immediately went and added Kerfoot just in case. I was like, I don't want Kyle to get him. I got to make sure I get him over Kyle.
Well, as you can, I'll put up his stat line here in just a second. He's sitting at he's the 34th best player in the league. Again, if you think about it, it's pretty insane. Look at that stat line, though. That's insane. He's literally doing it all. He's
so
playing
well-rounded.
over 2.5 minutes a game, 9 goals, 9 assists, 18 points already. He's always been a face-off machine. He's already got 96 face-off wins, which is insane. He's doing it all. He's literally doing it all, and as he should be. I think that he's a great player, and I'm actually really happy that he's getting the chance to actually show it. And Philly obviously has got to be more than happy with the setup that he's in right now, because that's probably one of the better lines in hockey at this point right now.
They absolutely are. So why not buy in on him? So keep Couturier. That's just a good guy to have. What about these three young guys? Clayton Keller, Rantanen.
All right, are a little bit different for me because I mean, if you're in a deeper league like we are, and he's in they're in your last sort of picks, yeah, and if you can keep them for sort of a long time when they start getting good, that's great. But here's the thing with me, I don't, I'm not a huge fan of keeping guys that are on shitty teams, and these two guys are going to be on bad teams for the foreseeable future, uh, and if you're looking at a guy that can fill out the stat line, you want to have guys that are on good teams that are getting you positive plus minuses as well, right? Um, that's a tough one for me. Again, this one would sort of depend on what round they were in. I mean, if they're anything later than 16, I would probably keep them, just because that they can put up those nice points. But I would say Clayton Keller's more of a keeper level than Rantanen is for me.
Yeah, I was on Rantanen last year, and it didn't work out at all. He wasn't good last year. I drafted him in like half my leagues, thinking he was going to break out last year. It looks like he's pretty good. The reason Colorado's so willing to trade off some of these older guys, he's not old. Sorry, I shouldn't even. He's like 24. I'm calling a 35-year-old is calling a 24-year-old old. But I think that they kind of see that they just needed these young guys. The one positive for having young guys on bad teams, they're going to get playing time. Like, there's not much to hold them back from getting a lot of, like New Jersey this year, with all these young guys that are producing. That's because New Jersey sucked at the beginning of the year. They looked on paper like they sucked.
What's really weird to me is the fact that these guys that Jersey has came out of nowhere. Like, they literally have come out of nowhere. I mean, I never heard of Jesper Bratt. I never heard of Will Butcher. I never heard of any of these guys. And they just sort of added them to their mix, and then just out of nowhere, they're just a lot better of a team. And that's really, it's good and it's bad. I mean, it's really good because you've always got that hope for the team that you cheer for, that they can find those kind of guys that can come in and make that kind of a difference. But it's also bad because, like, are they just extremely lucky? Is that like have New Jersey just been extremely lucky bringing these two guys that have basically been completely unknowns, and they're playing out of their mind good?
No, I think they've drafted well. Like, I think that Butcher, I looked into him more today because he's crazy. He's got no goals, but he's got points. He's putting up points, and he's plus, and he's not. Now, one thing I'll say about him, if you're in a categories league, on blocks and hits, and I don't really like having defensemen in categories leagues that don't an amount of hits and blocks. I actually generally target guys that are specifically good at hits and blocks.
I sort of
And as well,
I get my points from my forwards, and I get my hits and my blocks from my defensemen is kind of what I look for mostly. I mean, obviously
that's a mistake I've made in the past where I've not done that. I've gone for the sniper defenseman, the guy who scores more, doesn't do a lot of the other stuff, and it backfires because then you just lose those two categories week by week.
yeah, and two categories can mean a lot in a different league. I mean, it depends on what your league breakdown is as well, of course. I mean, we haven't really got into detail what our league is, but our league is pretty much fully statted out. And I'll run you by the stat line here. I can show you guys the first week. I can just show you kind of what ours breaks down as. I'll screen share this for you.
Because that does matter in how when we're saying they're ranking, they're ranking based on our system. So
yeah, if you take a look at our stat line here, we've got goals, assists, points. We've got plus, minus, PIMs, power play goals, assists, and points. Shorthanded points only, which I think you should only have that because, I mean, having the goals and assists is kind of just pointless. Game-winning goals, we've got shots on goal, face-off wins, hits, blocks, wins, and these are the goalie stats here: wins, goals against, average saves, shots against, save percentages, and shutouts. So our stat line is pretty filled up as well. So again, like when we're talking about the guys that we're valuing, we're mostly focusing on a very deep, sort of wide-ranging league. Like
some of the guys we're mentioning that are very high are guys that get face-off wins because that's a big thing in our league. Like, it's a whole other category. So
yeah,
a guy like Couturier the reason he's so high on our list is he's doing really well. but also those face-offs put him over the edge where he's actually top 50.
Yeah, I was in a league last year where it was basically just a points league. And when you're in just a basic points league, guys like Erik Karlsson would be really high up on your lists, or
Dude,
any of those point guys.
yeah, those defensemen who score are crazy.
Get past those first 4 or 5 defensemen, there's nobody that puts up anywhere near those kind of points, right? I mean, you look at Karlsson's a 70, 80 point defenseman. They're not easy to find. So if you're in a points only league, definitely look at those defensemen as being some of your top priority sort of picks. But if you're in a league like we are, like I said, I prefer having my scoring coming from up front and my hits and blocks coming from my defensive guys. There's a few guys out there that can really target that are really great that way too. I'll just throw this out there for hits. Komarov out of Toronto's the only Leaf that I'll probably ever have on any one of my teams, but just because he hits everything that moves. So.
There's an interesting one in Philly right now, Hag, who's totally off the radar player, but if you just look at his hits and blocks in the last month, he's crazy. Like he's going to, on this pace, he'll be one of the top guys at the end of the year. And that's a good young team, and they're playing him a lot of time. So he's worth a look if you're in a deep league like that with hits and blocks. I've been tempted to take him, but I just don't see him getting any points, basically. Time. But I just don't see him doing much more than just those stats. Like he's that good. He's like I don't know, Radko Gudas is rubbing off on other players in Philly.
Well, Radko Gudas is one of those guys, like in my other money league, it's not as deep as this one, but there was a guy who ended up drafting him. Probably could have been done on the waiver wire, but he was just one of those guys that, again, he just mulches your hits and blocks and is a good guy to have for those two categories week in and week out. So.
And he got some points last year. Like, even getting some points is okay.
Everyone would love to have a Shea Weber. I mean, like to have 7 Shea Webers on their defensive core because he's just a cat muncher. But
Dustin, he always goes for way more.
It's not like you can just
back to the Jersey guys with Will Butcher. I think Butcher's okay. I wouldn't buy at this price. Like, I'm sure that the guy selling him would try to get too much for him right now. Let him cool down a bit. He's not an almost point per game defenseman. That's not going to happen. But I think he's pretty good. He was good in college, and I really like college prospects. They come into the league seasoned, especially defensemen. They come in normally at an older age with more playing time behind their belt, with good coaches, and they're more mature. So I really like those NCAA guys. Like Gostisbehere was a NCAA guy as well. They go under the radar because they go to college, and we forget about them after they get drafted. Teams draft them later because they know they're going to go to college, and they're not going to see them for 4 years. So they go under the radar, but once they get in the NHL, and if you look at their stats, and they're like, Will Butcher's a guy who was great points in college, like was definitely a power play guy in college, almost point per game defenseman in college. So maybe he's just good, and even though we didn't hear a lot about him, doesn't mean he's not good. So I kind of like him. I think you got to wait because he's not going to be this good. Jesper Bratt, he was good in, I think he played in Sweden last year, maybe Finland. It's a low-scoring league, so it's always hard to judge that league for how good they're going to be in the NHL. But all the scouts say he's a great player, like he's sniper, like up and down the ice so quick, smooth as he could ever be. Well, like Kempe in LA, who everybody says is just this masterful skater and like silky hands. Guys that kind of came out of nowhere. I don't know about him. Like I just traded for him, but he wasn't like my target in the trade. It was more I just wanted to get a pick. But I do see potential there for him to be 45 points maybe. And you never know. He might be better than that. There's lots of these Finnish guys and Swedish guys that they play in that league where they only score 25 points in 40 games. And you think that's bad, but then it just doesn't translate the same in the NHL. Some of them come over here and they become snipers right away. just a very defensive league over there.
Just turned into duds too, like the Vegas prospect Shipyov or whatever the hell his name was.
Yeah, well, that's a classic Russian. That's why you gotta, if you're ever in dynasties and stuff, all the guys I do dynasties with, you gotta be careful. If you draft Russians that are getting, even if the Russian was a top 5 pick, it doesn't matter. Anything can happen with those Russians, man, because they have their own league where they get paid basically this. Some of them get paid almost the same amount of money to live where they want to live. If they don't want to leave Russia, they don't have to leave Russia, really. And if they get annoyed by a coach or an organization like Shipachyov, he just thinks he should be in there already. He doesn't think he should be in the minors. He's like, I was a sniper in KHL. They would pay me this much money. Why do I have to go to your minor system? You're a crappy team. Why am I going to your minor system? Like, so I kind of see his point, but it's too bad because he was a target by a lot of people this year. I know a lot of people spent a draft pick on him.
It was a hard,
hoping.
It was a hard pickup because he went through waivers. I mean, he's allowed to talk to teams, but man, getting him paying whatever $4.5 million is not something teams are going to be too keen on.
Yeah, it's like the same thing with Radulov in the past. I had Radulov in that dynasty league, and if you have a Russian whose relationship with the organization is starting to go bad, sell, get out as soon as you can, because you might never see them play ever in the NHL again.
This is true. Who, you got anybody else on your list there?
A little sneaky one here. This wasn't even on my list, but it just got me thinking about it. At the very end of the year, this is something to remember at the very end of the year. If you're about to be out of your league's ending, you didn't come in the top group, you're looking for your keepers. The last week, add Ilya Kovalchuk. I know that sounds crazy, but Ilya Kovalchuk the last 2 years has tried to get back over here. And team he's on, they don't want to let him. They're blocking him. They've blocked him 2 years in a row. But he's openly stated, I want to be back in the NHL. I'm not done in the NHL. I'm going to come back to the NHL. Not necessarily with New Jersey. He's going to be 34 or 35. Like, he's not going to be young. If some crazy twist of fate, he winds up in the NHL next year, and you kept him, and you picked him up off the waivers in the last week just for the sake of having him, who knows? Then he comes over here, and he's your 28th round keeper or a dollar keeper, and it's Ilya Kovalchuk. And who knows? He's good in Russia. He's not been bad in Russia. He's been Ilya Kovalchuk in Russia, their best player in that league. So
there are a couple guys that I would say there too, but I'm not going to tell you because give away too much on that. But I like.
Let's erase this part of the podcast then, where I just told you mine. Like last year, another example of that is. These are just my little keeper strategies. The very last week of the year, pick up backup goalies. Pick up the backup goalies that did well, that are not on roster, that are just backups, like NT Renta, Scott Darling last year. Guys like that, because you never know what team might trade for them. They might wind up in Pittsburgh. They might wind up in Tampa Bay. You never know. So, and they could wind up, if you're grabbing them at very end of the year as a waiver wire guy, there could be a keeper for you. Like I had Darling. Darling was a guy that the last week of the year last year, I was like, you know what? He did really well with Chicago. They're probably not going to re-sign him. I was reading all the stuff saying they probably were not going to re-sign him. Somebody would take him, and then Carolina went in. He's not been good, but I got him. He was a absolute end of the draft keeper for me, a dollar keeper. So
$28 as well. So what do you think? What do you think about this trade proposal that I just put through? Little, Ekman Larson, and Quick for Couturier, Miller, and a third.
What Couturier? What round do you keep him in?
He would be kept in the. I just looked, and he's very favorable. Where Couturier would be 22nd round.
Dude, if he takes it, good on you. But there's no way I would accept that trade. I would actually be like, hey, no more offers, please. I don't want any more offers for Couturier. I know what he's worth. As a 22nd round keeper, huge value.
He told me that he was interested in letting me have him before, but I just didn't like the deal, so I didn't pull it. We'll see what he says on that one.
Honestly, if you're like in that same league, I've given up, but for good reason. I traded 5 of my picks away or something. So like I'm like in the middle, but I'm never gonna catch up. Um, so I would just be targeting guys like Couturier, and I would even let yourself get a little bit ripped off as long as you get him, because having Couturier as a 22nd round keeper next year is crazy good.
That's a pretty decent deal both ways. I mean, he's getting an upgrade at goaltending because he needs goaltending. He's sitting with Rask and Newvirth right now. Rask, Newvirth, and Miller.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's going to solidify his goaltending. He's going to get Little back for faceoffs at least, and Ekman Larson.
Yeah, but you also asked for a 3rd round pick, right?
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. Adding a 3rd round pick in there is not nothing. That's a huge thing.
But
that's worth way more than Little's stops.
Right? You're getting Miller and Couturier back.
You just got to make sure don't publish this podcast until after you send the offer and get a rejection. Yeah, or maybe, but like don't let him see this because I'm naysaying this trade. I'm going to veto, although I don't believe in vetoes.
We'll see if it goes through anyway.
Real quick, I got 2 other names that I just thought were interesting for guys that are they legit or not. Dadonov in Florida, who was a lot of people knew he did really well in Russia. They got him over here. Part of the reason they let Marchessault and Riley Smith go is that I think Dadonov was really good. And Dadonov is really good. That's basically my whole point is that the points he's got right now, he's buddies with Barkov. They're good friends. He's going to be happy. He's not a Russian to worry about. And I think his points right now are unreal, and they're going to stay unreal. I think he's going to heat up and get more comfortable. He's Panarin, but a little bit less, I think, than Panarin. But he's got that kind of value. He was that good in Russia. And the only other one is Sergachev in Tampa Bay.
I would say on Sergachev, sell high, because, I mean, I don't think he's going to get any more value than what he's at right now.
I don't know, though. He's top 10 pick, and I know he's 19. He won't do this. You're right. He's not going to be this. So if you can sell and get – but if you are in a keeper, he's an amazing keeper because he's also late pick, who's now 80% owned kind of guy.
I'm not sure. I think you could probably sell him and get stuff back that would be more valuable for a longer term than what he's going to put up.
Yeah.
With.
Yeah, I agree.
Dadonov or whatever his name is in Florida. It's a tough one too because, again, Florida's a real tough one for me because I don't know if they're a good team or a shitty team, and on separate nights they can be very much like that. They can look like world beaters and just be really on, and then the next night they look like a big pile of steaming wet donkey dung. So it's hard to sort of place my finger on where they're going to be. I mean, I still think that picking up Roberto Luongo as a legitimate starter in most leagues is a smart decision because I do have confidence in Florida to be a good team, and Luongo's going to get most of the starts there. It's just that they haven't really put it all together yet, and that's the kind of part that if it's the same thing that's sort of happened in Florida year after year, are they ever going to be able to pull it together, you know? So for me, it's a tough one. It would depend on the round, I guess. But yeah, anything over 15, I would probably keep him in a deeper league for sure.
Yeah. The other one, I think after Barzal, like, I mean, we're the day that Barzal got 5 points, which is a crazy thing. I think he's still a sell high, even at that. Even he's on a real good hot streak right now. Real solid hot streak.
I think Barzal is very similar to Jordan Eberle. He's a little bit too small. I mean, he's got speed and hands, but I think he's a little bit similar to that way. And if you can catch him on the edge of on the end of a 5-point night, and everybody's sort of got all these high expectations on him, I will say the deal that you made for him, I would be surprised if you kept him in the 12th. Just say that.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah, I'm very aware of that. I didn't do that trade for Barzil at all.
Yeah.
Barzil getting 5 points. Barzil was a usable player this year that might be keepable next year if he really outperforms. But I did that trade for the pick. I wanted the pick. I didn't really care about anything else.
Yeah. But I would say, yeah, it depends on where he is. If he's past anywhere past 15 to past 16 or something like that, yeah, he's probably worth a spot there, I guess. But yeah, he's not going to really be doing too much for hits and stuff like that. But he'll definitely get you some points.
A couple guys that are top end guys that are more, are they going to keep up this pace? Are Kopitar. Kopitar looks like he's back to his old self. Kopitar is great this year.
The Kings in general have looked phenomenal this year.
Yeah. And the question is, was that because Kopitar, were they bad because Kopitar wasn't really healthy the last couple of years? And now he's back to being superstar
I think
Kopitar?
it has more to do with them being comfortable with their goaltender. Quick is finally back. I think that's their biggest thing is they've got Quick back and they don't have to worry about playing the defensive game in order to go out and be a bit more offensive. They've got Quick back. He's in full form. I mean, the guy's numbers are ridiculously good.
Yeah.
And, I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, if you have a good goalie back there and he knows, if you know he can bail you out, you can make those extra couple of strides up the other way and, do a couple little
Yeah.
do when you don't have full confidence in your goalie back there. So I think that's the biggest thing. And I mean, Kopitar is such a good two-way player. But Dustin Brown's even sort of playing completely different too. So I think it's more Quick than it is Kopitar.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I like that. But do you think he's going to stay this good? Or do you think he's going to drop off?
I think he goes as the LA Kings go. I mean, let's be realistic. If the Kings want to shut stuff down, they're the best team in the league at shutting shit down.
Yeah.
But
They've won cups that way.
again, some of the young guys that they brought in, like this Iafallo kid, this Kempe, again, they're kind of gotten the same situation as Jersey. They brought these guys in, and nobody heard of these guys beforehand. But look at what they're doing. Like Iafallo's not blazing up the scoring or anything like that, but he's playing a solid role. I mean, lots of ice time. He doesn't look out of place. He's not costing them wins. He's not a minus player. He's doing a lot of really good things, right? So
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see if they sort of stay that. I definitely think they can. I think they've got one of the more underrated defenses in the league as well.
Yeah, they're solid on.
I mean, aside from Doughty, there's a lot of really good things on that Los Angeles defense.
Yeah, I agree. They're actually a better team. Like they were one of the teams I thought was going to cool off, but I'm looking at it more and more how good Kopitar's been, and I like Kempe. So guys like that are coming into the lineup and they're good right away. So maybe they're not. Maybe they are going to keep this up. They were a dynasty a few years ago. They were looking like, oh my God, them and the Blackhawks were the two teams that not Pittsburgh at that time. It was those two teams kept being there. And you're like, oh, LA is going to get hot and they're going to win it again because that's what they would always do. They just get real hot, play like this. Nobody can beat them.
Yep.
It was a lot of Kopitar. It was a lot of Kopitar reaching his peak.
Let's switch gears here a little bit and talk about some teams that are actually not doing so well and some teams that are surprising at this point. This is where I'm going to kind of get into my Oilers talk and I'm going to rant a little bit. I also want to touch a little bit with you. I'm not sure how much hockey you watch, but I watch a little bit of almost every game in the morning because the games that we broadcast are in the morning for us. So I get up early. I get up early in the morning and I watch parts of 4 or 5 different games. And I gotta ask. I'm not sure if you've seen any of these, and I don't know if I can even load them up. But I've got a little bit of frustration with the way that they're calling goalie interference. And just to clarify, I'm a goalie, okay? So I understand that goalies want to have their crease clean and they want to be able to make, their saves uncontested and stuff, and I get that. But this incidental brush contact that's being called back is insane. It's gotten to the point where it is it's barely a jersey brush and they're calling goals back. And I think it's detrimental to the game. I'm very forgiving when it comes to a ref missing an offside by a couple of inches or if a blade's not down on that side. And I think that those parts of human error should be left in the game. But I also think that when you have the technology to make it go to a video review, you better make the damn call correctly. Because if you don't, you end up looking like a bunch of retards, idiots. Sorry, I shouldn't use that word, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
That's what you end up looking like, and it's frustrated me. It's frustrated me since last year in the playoffs when Kessler was all over Cam Talbot's pads. You take that goal back, and it's the Edmonton Oilers in the Stanley Cup Finals.
Yeah.
And that's huge. Like, that's a really, really big issue. And the thing is that when they're getting it wrong over and over and over and over again, it gets really frustrating. It makes you wonder who's actually watching this stuff. Because the other night in Edmonton had the same thing. There was a high stick puck went in the net. And it was clearly high, but they just called it a goal. And the game was out of hand, but that doesn't matter. What they should be focusing on is getting it 100% right 100% of the time.
Yeah.
So there was a couple games. There was a New York game I watched last week where they called a goal off in front of the net. I won't bring this stuff up because we're not allowed to actually show it on here anyway. But and I don't even know if I'd be able to find it. But it's gotten to the point where there's not even real goaltender interference. Like literally, a guy's brushing up against Lundqvist's jersey or Talbot's jersey, and they're calling it back. And the thing is, it's so inconsistent because one ref will say any contact on that goalie and it's no goal. But then there's some refs out there that'll be a little bit of contact is fine, as long as it's not hindering him. But it's getting to the point now where you literally can't touch a goalie. You can't even be within a foot of that goalie and touch him with your upper body as a defenseman's pushing you, or it's called back. And it's...
I'm sorry. I honestly thought you would have the opposite opinion because you are a goalie. I'm surprised that you're...
That's what I mean. I'm a goalie, and I'm the same way. If it's impeding my ability to make a save, then yeah, it should be called. But at the same time, if somebody brushes my elbow 3 minutes before a shot's taken and it goes in, it's a goal.
Yeah, it's
just
weird because we're in this era where we've been trying to raise scoring. We want to raise scoring. The smaller pads, smaller gear. Please make everything harder on the goalies because goalies got too good for a while. They got to wear giant gear and nothing went in the net. But now we're going back to like, don't touch the goalies, call everything back. I totally agree that it's counterintuitive. If you really want to add scoring, let a little bit of contact. The back in the day when Gretzky was scoring those goals and everybody was scoring those goals, their goalies were wearing no gear and they were not protected and they were getting run over. You can watch a lot of those old highlights of guys scoring and there's guys cruising right into the net, full speed, and the puck goes in and they all cheer and there's no callback and it's good to go. So it's taken away big guys in the NHL as well. Like that whole role of like the guy who stands in front of the net. And I kind of like that role. Like I kind of dig the guys that are big fellas that just stand in front and cause a distraction. They do it without hitting the goalie. They do their best to not hit the goalie. Occasionally they do. But now there's no point in having those guys if they call everything back.
I'll see if I can try to find out what game it was here, just so I can kind of see. I'll bring it up on the screen here. I know we're not really supposed to, but I'll see if I can find it. I'll bring it up here just to let everybody sort of see what it is. But it was, I believe it was the Rangers against, it might have been the Leafs. I can't remember what it was. I usually kind of watch the games that are the closest at any sort of given time, but I think it was, maybe it was Tampa. Was it Tampa? It might have been. Yeah, I believe it was. See if I can find it. See if I can find something and see if I can possibly sort of bring it up. Maybe it's got some review on it here. Let's see.
I mean, the thing is now every sport is the question with all these sports that are doing it. UFC did it now. Baseball's doing it. But we're getting to a point of if you're going to do it, do it. Like, absolutely. You can get rid of a ref and do it with more technology. Like baseball, calling balls and strikes. What's the point of having a real umpire do that? Why not just have a computerized thing that can just absolutely tell if it is a ball or if it is a strike and takes ever the whole game? There's so much controversy in baseball in the playoffs this year with bad calls. And I was an umpire. I used to umpire every year for like 2 months during the summer. And I used to do it to high level games and very intense games and like pressure filled games. And man, it's not an easy job. Like being a ref is not an easy job. None of those jobs are easy. They're going to make mistakes, but we all get pissed off when they do. So we either have to commit and just go all in on video replays and use them way more and find a way to speed it up, or go back to the old way and let the refs make mistake calls sometimes. But I don't see that ever happening. So
Well,
I just feel like
the thing that frustrates me the most is that when video replay, they're getting it wrong, and that's the part that really frustrates me. I mean, there should be some sort of a standard where, like I said, I understand the point where they're checking for goalie interference and if there's something there, but they brought that in last year, and how seriously, and it's not just me being an Oiler fan that's saying this. Like, how do you miss that on Ryan Kessler? How does that not get called? You know which?
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like because the playoffs come around and it's a whole different rule book. It just becomes a whole different rule book.
Because there's no way that flies, and that's the problem that I'm sort of having. And then you look at these ones that are happening here today, like, and there was twice the other morning when I'm up and I watched 2 goals go in. They said, "Oh, these are going to go to replay," and one I watched and said, "Yeah, it's going to be no goal. It's a goal." And then the other one was where I'm talking about they just literally just not even basically didn't even touch Lundqvist. Like I'm talking glitter brush, and they called the goal back. And I remember I was just shaking my head going, are you fucking kidding me? Like,
yeah,
I can't even figure it out for the life of me. And then again, the other day in the Oilers game, sticks well above the crossbar. You can see where it hits. It's a good goal. I don't understand what they're looking at. And this is the problem I have. I don't mind using technology to get the call right, but get the fucking call right at least, right?
Yeah.
That's
What's the point of using it? I think they're terrified of slowing the game down more. They're just scared. Like the guys in that booth who are looking at that replay are going, "Oh my God, we have 1 minute to do this before commercial break's over. We got to figure this out right now. We got to decide." But if it's, especially that kind of call, the Edmonton one, which does decide something so important, take the time. The fans can wait. Make the right call.
I don't.
There's going to be people who boo in the crowd. There's going to be people who get annoyed. But
on that play, they went upstairs twice on that one. Yeah. And in the last minute, so it's automatically league reviewed, and they blew it twice. Yeah. So, like I said, I don't like I said, they were so adamant about to make sure they get it right, and they just keep blowing these calls, and it's the most frustrating thing for me. Because I remember the glow puck and all that shit that they used to bring in to try and make it easier for everybody. This is more frustrating than any of that stuff for me. It really is. Even them trying to take fighting out of the game, which I think you should never do. It's extremely frustrating for me. And it's like it's been a 2-year gong show of people with clown shoes trying to figure out what's a goal and not's a goal. And again, I don't think it should be that difficult. Common sense, knowledge of the game, watch the tape, watch the play, make the call. Just don't get it wrong. Like blatantly wrong is insane to me. That call on Kessler was completely 100% wrong. And
it should be simple. Like, and they're sending those reviews to Toronto most of the time, right? Like the more important ones. I think they get sent somewhere to the hockey operations office.
Yeah.
And it's always the same group of people. Maybe they need there needs to be a training process with those people. And I mean, there is, obviously, but there should be mistakes for sure. But trust me, it's not only hockey that has this problem. Every sport. Football has crazy problems with replay. and they're full of replays. Their games get really slowed down by replays. I think they have a cool system, the way they do it with challenges. And if you use a challenge and it doesn't, and you're wrong, you lose a timeout. Like there is penalty, but you can't do that in hockey because nobody cares about timeouts. So you could get a penalty if you.
No, right? I mean, if you're wrong on an offside challenge, you get a penalty.
Know that.
Yeah, it's a new one. I don't know if you're into this or not, Shane, but we'll go after this. If you did not watch the UFC this past weekend, you should. All three champions, amazing. All three of them were really great. The card itself was just amazing. So if you get a chance to, I don't know if you follow UFC or not, but that card was amazing.
Yeah, I follow it avidly. I didn't see it yet either because I haven't had time, but I know the results. I couldn't avoid the results. So
yeah,
I watched the GFC fight.
The Dillashaw and Garbrandt fight was great. Joachek or whatever her name is, that fight, title fight was really good. And again, USP kind of coming back and doing what he does the event was really great.
Like Cody Garbrandt, I know, and I like Dillashaw too. I like those guys. Dillashaw has had some great fights, and so is Cody Garbrandt's fight with Dominic Cruz was a really good fight. That was a great fight too. So it was a crazy card. It's one of the best cards I've ever seen.
The better events that I've watched in a few years. I mean, I watched them for the most part kind of religiously ever since the old days, like UFC 1. I've watched those things, and yeah, this card was a really good one. Really good.
I think we got to have a get together over that then, because that's something I like to go to, like Brass Monkey, and watch them too sometimes. So we'll find a time where we can go see one of those together, because I like not just hockey, watching it at least.
I think I have.
I am super.
I have on my. I probably shouldn't say this on my hard drive. I think I have UFC 1 to like UFC 160 something. So
nice.
You can go back and watch.
Yeah, I used to watch the Pride stuff too. I love Pride. Those fights were crazy because they could stomp each other and stuff, and it was fighting twice in a night stuff. Like there's Shogun. I used to love Shogun, who was one of my favorites.
A couple really just crazy incidents. There was this one guy who was trying to do an arm lock, and this guy just kind of turned over and just hammer fisted him right in the nuts about 15 times. Boom, boom, boom. And it's legal. You're just like, yeah, that's fucking crazy.
And you're gonna win if you do that.
Jesus. But anyway, I guess
good idea for the future too.
So that's unfortunate. But we'll try and get him on here sometime soon.
Yeah, we'll find a better day for him. Like the difference with you, me, and him is that he can do it different days. It's not like Richard where like he can only do it certain times. Kyle, we could probably find a time that the three of us are free another day.
Let's do that then. Let's try and set it up. That'd be great. Thanks again for sitting and chit-chatting with me for a bit, Shane. As always, I enjoy doing these. They're a lot of fun.
Sorry that I disappeared with the coughing fit, but yeah,
right.
I got it back under control. So
cool. I'm pretty sure we'll get a few comments about that, so should be no worries. Thanks everybody for watching. Appreciate it. Please send us any feedback you guys have on these. I mean, if there's anything you have questions or comments or whatever about, just let us know. And this is the Hockey Outsiders. Thanks for listening, everybody.